evening, everyone. My name is Barbara Glass, and I am a board member of the Long Island chapter of the New York League of Conservation Voters. On behalf of the League and our co-host, our friends at the North Fork Environmental Council, I want to say welcome. Special thanks to Bill Toder and Rose Sanders from the NFEC, and to Josh Keinberg, the Senior Vice President of the League, who came out from New York City to be with us tonight. Thanks very much, Josh. The League's role in this evening is through its education fund, whose mission is not only to educate, but to engage and empower citizens to be effective environmental advocates. This is accomplished in several ways. We produce and distribute publications, we hold forums on conservation issues, and we conduct civic engagement campaigns, which is what brought us together here this evening. We will soon be hearing from incumbent Riverhead Supervisor Sean Walter and his challenger, Ms. Angela DeVito, as they respond to questions on several key environmental issues which have been selected by the local community. While the candidates have been given the general topics, they have not been given the specific questions. We hope you will hear something tonight that will assist you in your decision-making process as you contemplate your vote on Election Day. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and also to acknowledge several other groups who are here participating with us this evening. The Community Planning Center, the Group for the East End, the Jamesport South Jamesport Civic Association, the Peconic Baykeeper, Peconic Green Growth, and Sound Park Heights Civic Association. Thank you, all of you. I'd like to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate this evening. And it's my pleasure now to turn the floor over to Bill Toder, who's going to serve as our moderator. Thank you, Bill.
As Barbara said, the candidates have been told in advance of the four general areas we'll be talking about tonight. And they are ground and surface water quality and nitrogen loading, dark skies, EPCAL, and open space preservation. The format for this evening is, after opening statements by each candidate for about 3 to 5 minutes, we'll have myself asking the initial question on each of those topics. After the candidate answers, we open it up to the floor if you have questions on that topic. We ask, because time is so limited and we want to be fair to Sean and to Angela, get them out on time, please keep your questions to those topics. Once that's done, we'll ask the next topic and move on. We do ask that you make sure your cell phones are turned off so that we don't interrupt anybody at this time. And with that, introduce Supervisor Sean Walter.
To make sure my cell phone is Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. I don't expect when people open up the dictionary and they look up environmentalists, they see a picture of Sean Walter, and I get that and I understand that. I will tell you that I am a conservationalist along the lines of Teddy Roosevelt, so if anybody understands what Teddy Roosevelt did, maybe they'll understand a little bit about me. Before I got as town supervisor, I was in the town attorney's office and worked for Barbara Glass and Councilwoman Glass and Councilwoman Sanders, and my job was to preserve open space and farmland. And the town supervisor at the time said, preserve 1,000 acres or it's your job. And we did. And so I was an environmental engineer for the Air National Guard in West Hampton Beach. I'm actually one of the people responsible for the sewage treatment plant at the 106th Rescue Wing. If you're interested, I'll tell you more about that later. So I've got environmental credentials in different areas. But I want to introduce you to the largest commercial industrial subdivision in New York State and probably in the Northeast. If there's one thing that I think I'm most proud of, is what we've done at EPCAL here. This is we own about 2,400 acres. We are subdividing 600 acres out for commercial. I say commercial industrial development. We don't know yet because we have to do the environmental impact statement. We spent 2 years working with the environmental community, with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, with Dick Amber, to come up with a subdivision that preserves the environment, protects the grasslands, protects the groundwater, protects the tiger salamanders, and does everything that y'all in this room probably support. And at the same time, it allows us 600 acres of commercial industrial development. What people don't understand about this site, and we would never want to do this, you could fit the entire Hauppauge Commercial Industrial Park right here. Everything in Hauppauge right here. Hauppauge is one of the largest commercial industrial parks in the United States. So we didn't opt to do that. We chose 600 acres. And I'm very proud, Dick Amber and I don't always see eye to eye, but I'm very proud when somebody like Dick Amber supported this. I'm very proud when the DEC gives the town lead agency status. I don't know, Barbara and Rose have been through several, I'm sure, scoping hearings. Our scoping hearing for a project of this size lasted no more than 40 minutes because we did the work up front. And folks, I'm a problem solver. That's what I do. We don't always get it right the first time, but we will get it right. And this is a reflection of that. So I want to, for an opening statement, I don't know whether you're going to have questions on this, but this is the most important thing that's going on both environmentally in this town right now, and from an economic development standpoint, and from a job standpoint. And I'm just really happy that we all have come together as an environmental community, a town community, and a business community on this. So I'll leave it at that. And Bill, I don't know if it went 3 minutes or not.
No, you did fine. First question on ground and surface water quality and nitrogen loading. The town is taking the costly but necessary steps to comply with the state-mandated upgrade to the sewage treatment plant. Science has also identified failing septic systems and agricultural practices as significant nitrogen sources impacting our ground and surface waters. What is your plan to address these and other threats to our waters?
I'm going to turn a question back to you folks, because I've asked this question. The town of Riverhead sewage treatment plant right now treats to, I believe it's 30 micrograms per liter nitrogen. And I shouldn't say this number, but I believe it's about, we put out about 75 pounds of nitrogen a day into the bay. That's, by all standards, not a lot for the entire bay. Probably a heavily landscaped yard is putting out something significant along those lines. We are going to have to upgrade conduct a $22 million sewage treatment plant to reduce that, I believe it's 15 micrograms per liter. So we're going to cut it in half. Now the current sewage treatment plant outperforms its design standards almost 365 days a year. We have a tough time in heavy rain events. It's an old system, so we have a tough time in heavy rain events. So one of the things I want you to think about, $22 million, 75 pounds a day we put in the bay. Would it be better to take that $22 million and make grants available to the people that have communities around the Peconic Bay and have them create nitrix type systems? I don't know the math. People have told me the math of the nitrogen because I think each household is about a pound a year, so it's not a lot. I think somebody told me half a pound to a pound a year, but I could be wrong. But that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking about. We've been regulating point source pollution since the late 60s, and that's all we seem to understand. Because we know where the pipe is, so regulate it. It's not the pipe anymore. It's your septic systems. And redesigning the Riverhead sewage treatment plant is going to contribute this much to the increase of water quality in the bay. And I'm not saying this much isn't a bad thing, but you might be able to get this much for $22 million. I don't know. That being said, we're undertaking the upgrade. And what I find amazing is Steve Malone, County Executive Malone, now you wouldn't think he would do this, he's not of my political party, the county legislature is run not of my political party, is granting the town of Riverhead $8 million towards that upgrade. That's huge. They worked very, very hard. There wasn't a place that Wayne Horsley went discussing sewers and that grant that I didn't show up. Kind of like this. And we worked hard to get that grant, and we acknowledge that, and we're very happy about it. But it is time now for the County of Suffolk to think about the nitrix type systems. They don't even have those systems approved as treatment systems in this county. And that's a problem. We're basically using 19th century technology. We put our sewage in a pit. And so, I agree, I support the county. I've thrown this out there on many occasions as to how to do this. The County of Suffolk has to step up, and they have not done it.
Do we have any questions from the audience on water quality? Yes?
You're talking about the sewage treatment plant in Riverhead.
Right.
Okay, so what areas do they service?
Riverhead?
Yeah.
Riverhead sewers. Riverhead services the Main Street area, Route 58, most of Route 58, it ends at the hospital. They are picking up 21st Century Oncology, will eventually be hooked up into the sewage treatment plant. And the area is sort of between Route 58 and downtown, the houses in between there. You want to do something, you want to hear something, even a great idea, but this is the next term's idea. Well, let me back up. We also take in about 24% of our flow comes from the county seat, the jail,
Right.
county center. They pay about 18% of our costs, but for Legislator Krupski and County Executive Malone's grant, we're very happy because now they're sharing more in this. But I want to say something better. You want to talk about water quality, one of the best things we could do. One of the things that's killed West Main Street is the Wild Scenic and Recreation Rivers Act. And I say that, everybody thinks, okay, that's great, we keep the river wild. And I get that. But West Main Street was never wild. And what's happened is you can't have any real economic development on West Main Street, so all the old houses and the septic systems, they just dump right into the river.
That's part of the other part of my question.
So here's the plan for next year, if we're successful. And we're actually working on it now. The town was able to get the Community Rivers Act designation on West Main Street on the north side from where the pipe ends, roughly the pump station is across from Maple Tree Deli. You'll see a fenced-in area with a generator. That's our pump station. Takes everything from the county and down Polish Town into that collection system and ships it over. We have approval for Community Rivers Act all the way to the Blackman Plumbing parcel on the north side. I want to make Community Rivers Act designation on the north side of West Main Street all the way down to Hotel Indigo. Hotel Indigo is on septic. That would create an economic engine on the north side. But what it would do is allow all those houses to come off. If you wanted to do commercial, you could do commercial, the light commercial. You'd have a sewage treatment plant to take care of all the sewage. You'd probably get rid of a lot of waste going into the river. But the biggest thing you're going to get rid of, Hotel Indigo and part of Tanger 1 is septic. So if we could get Community Rivers Act all the way down there, and they'll pay for the pipe, they've told us, but we've got to get it down there.
Okay, we're talking about town of Riverhead. However, where we're impacted is not just town of Riverhead, it's Southampton and Brookhaven. Have you spoken with any of...
Absolutely. I'm 100%, I can't help her, I shouldn't, go ahead.
My question is, why haven't we all, I'm not saying just you, work together between Southampton Town and Brookhaven, which goes up this side, on the opposite side. We're separated by a river, that's it. And if you do one thing on one side of the river and not on the other side of the river, nothing is gonna happen. Everything is gonna be the same. And $22 million, if we probably put in a little bit more money towards that, couldn't we get bigger grants, even federal grants and state grants, to do a consortium of towns that would help reduce the nitrogen loading into the bays and the estuary with all the towns? I mean, this is something that everyone needs to work on, not just the town.
I agree with you. One of the things that, but I have to tell you, some people accuse me of being too technical, so I'm not going to be too technical. But we did a couple things wrong, and Barbara and Rose are going to learn about this in a minute, and it was really a dumb thing. And we didn't see it, and I'm responsible for it, too. Our sewage treatment plant is a very small piece of property. Oh, that's right, I was responsible. We bought the Saglioka property, all surrounding our sewage treatment plant, and turned it into parkland. The other side of the sewage treatment plant is the county park. When I got elected, I said to Anna Thronholz, I would love to bring sewer capability to not what everything they wanted, but Flanders Road, the traffic circle, and create, because Main Street will come back, and in large part because of the sewer. So I said, we'll bring the pipe over there. Two things have to happen. One, we have to expand our taxing jurisdiction into Southampton. We can't do it on an intermunicipal agreement. We've been burned by Southampton before under an intermunicipal agreement. Riverhead does its fair share for the East End for sewage treatment plant. We have the scavenger waste plant, less than 20%, closer to 15% of the scavenger waste comes out of Riverhead. 50% comes from Southampton, another 25 from East Hampton, and the other 25 between Southold and Brookhaven. So we're doing our part. We're the only scavenger waste plant. But we got burned by Southampton in a lawsuit where we were taxing our residents for scavenger waste services, and then they would pay a tipping fee. Southampton just paid a tipping fee. So when I took over office, I eliminated the tax to Riverhead because that's not fair to Riverhead. We upped the tipping fee, so we all pay the same rate. So I said to the Southampton Town Board at a function I was at, I said, we have to expand our taxing jurisdiction into Southampton so that whatever the costs are, we can pass on. I mean, it's no different than the Riverhead school districts in Southampton. I did not receive a favorable response from them. So Southampton has reached out, Vince, Taldone, and Franco, not happy with the plan that came up with in Southampton. They've reached out to our sewage treatment plant and said, can you handle $15,000 gallons a day? So it's a drop in the bucket, we'll do it. But you've got to let us expand the taxing jurisdiction, because when there's a cost, it's got to get passed on to the whole district. But here's where I kick myself, we never thought about this. Because we didn't know we had to upgrade the sewage treatment plant. The reality is, the property that the Riverhead sewage treatment plant is on is too small to treat any more waste with the new system. We have tertiary treatment with ultraviolet light disinfection. We are making a more powerful ultraviolet light disinfection, but we have sequencing batch reactors, and we are putting a membrane filtration system in the sequencing batch reactors to pull out the nitrogen. Basically, it's almost like a reverse osmosis. Think about sticking a straw down into the SBR, and there's cloth around it, sucking on the straw, and everything gets stuck to the cloth. The problem is we need additional storage vats to do this. We're going to be using the 1930 vats that we had when the plant was built. Once we use that, we're out of property. So we're kind of jammed up. We'd have to go to the state legislature and get 2 acts of legislature to alienate that parkland. But I agree with you. I can't help Brookhaven, but I will do everything I can to help Southampton, because a rising tide lifts all boats. If this side of the river goes up, that side will too, but it has to be equal. It has to be sewered.
Let's move on to the next topic for now. Dark skies. The town of Riverhead was one of the first towns to adopt dark skies legislation back in 2007. But it appears that enforcement and compliance has been very loose, especially with respect to new development projects. What are your plans to address the ever-increasing light pollution on our night skies?
Actually, I think it was adopted before 2007, 2002, because I drafted it.
My mistake.
It was Eddie Densesky. It was strange because Eddie came and he said he wanted to do this. I'm like, really? And I drafted it, and I think we were the second town on Long Island that had it. And we do enforce it, and that's true. I mean, the site plans that come through have to be dark skies compliant. There was a shopping center in Wading River that wasn't dark skies, Sirota Shopping Center wasn't dark skies compliant, and this is before my time. They went and made them change all the light heads, so we do enforce it. It's easy to say, we don't. If you give me an example, we will. But it's just no different than what they tried to do on, some of the places on Route 58. They want to increase the size of the pole heights and increase the intensity of the lights. We don't allow it. So we've been doing it. I don't remember the town in Nassau County that did it, but we were the second town on Long Island, and we'll continue to do that. You got my word. And if there's something that is being constructed that doesn't, let me know. We'll make sure it's taken care of.
If we have questions from the audience, I forgot to mention, if you can state your name and town, just since we do have reporters here, I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Any questions on dark skies? No. So let's move on to the next. EPCAL. The town has indicated that several hundred acres of habitat will be set aside as open space if the proposed subdivision is approved. What is your plan for the proper management and maintenance of the preserved lands to ensure that they are accessible to the public for passive recreational and active educational uses and still remain viable habitat?
I'm going to give them to you. And I don't say that jokingly. The town should not be in the, I don't want to say should not be. The property would be better suited in an environmental community or with an environmental organization running the property, whether it's a Peconic Land Trust, group for the East End, group for whatever the group is, group for the North Fork. Well, one of the things that we're trying to do, let me back up, because 60% of the property is going to be preserved. Virtually all the grassland will be preserved. I have a little tweak, and I want to run this by you guys. The DEC wants us to backfill the closed runways and taxiways with sand and plant grass. I don't think that's a good idea. They're not going to ask us to rip up the runways. The grass isn't going to grow. They say it will. I will comply. If that's what they want, I will comply. One of the things that I'd like to do with the taxiways and runways is do that, backfill it with grass, but put a solar farm on the taxiway and the runway, because you've got the concrete to anchor these things down. And from what they tell me, grass can grow with the solar panels the way they're designed now, because you put solar panels on landfills. So that's something that I would like some support from the environmental community to go back to the DEC with. But in terms of the 60%, I've already been in touch, Bill, you and I may have had the conversation, but I've been in touch with several groups to see if I could get them to take it over, to manage it as a wildlife refuge, or whatever it is, the 60%. That remains natural. I mean, some of it may be difficult for a group to take over. I've spoken to people from, and don't ask me their names, but I've spoken to people from ESF at Syracuse to see whether they would have an interest in doing it. We've had some conversations with people from Stony Brook, but what I'd like to do is turn the remaining property over to an organization that could maintain it for what it needs to be. If you ask the government to maintain it, I don't even have the money to paint the town hall or fix parking lots and potholes. It's very difficult for a government to do these things because it's not their area of expertise. So I'd be very happy to turn it over to the appropriate environmental community to do it. And the DEC said, whoa, no, we don't want it. So that's not an option, but that's what my goal is.
Any questions from the audience? Okay, a follow-up on that would be, who would be responsible then for habitat maintenance? I mean, if you cannot turn it over, both as it's being developed in order to protect these areas from construction and mishaps, but also once it's completed. And as you you talked about, there's grasslands preservation as an example, which calls for periodic burns. So who would be in charge of those areas, those practices, and overseeing that?
The town. We're developing a wildlife habitat protection plan as part of the environmental impact statement. And we will come up with mechanisms, whether it's burning or mowing or any combination of that, to maintain the grasslands and the habitat. If we can't find an organization to do it, the town will probably contract with an organization to do it. I don't think the town will go out there. And I don't know whether we burn it or we mow it, but it can be, I would imagine we could do either one. But nope. You know, having a town worker out there mowing the grass is not lending itself to the environmental education opportunities that are out there. So if we can find a group to do it, or a university to do it, we actually have, I doubt they're going to do it. We have, I can't remember the university, but Andrew Sabin came and asked to do some tests on tiger salamanders. And there's a university in California that's testing tiger salamander migration routes. Barbara, could you ever believe that I would be talking about tiger salamander migration routes? Tiger salamander migration routes. And who knows, maybe a California university would want it. I don't know, that hasn't been figured out. But for finding a group like that, it would fall on the town.
Glennsbury?
Would you be willing to give a budget to that group? Because I think part of it is everybody's afraid of the cost. So one is the responsibility for it, but another is being responsible for any costs involved.
We would have to. What's going to happen, I think that people fully understand the ramifications of EPCAL. Of all this property, we were hoping to develop 800 acres. The DEC pushed this down to 600, but 800 acres was all that ever could be developed because of the Pine Barrens Act, clearing standards of the Pine Barrens Act, the tiger salamander habitat. So all these things where we were going to do all these projects over the 10 years before I got elected really were never grounded in reality, because all those standards, when they were put down on the property in a fair and legitimate way by both VHB and DEC, you realized you had 800 acres. We kind of gave up 200 acres to the DEC. But what in the Habitat Protection Plan and in the new Part 182 regulations, the DEC is required that this type of thing, for not just a town, for any private developer or homeowner, has to be funded forever. Truthfully, I think that's going to get struck down by the Board of Appeals, and the Commissioner of the DEC has indicated that 182 regulations, after the Riverhead lawsuit is dispensed, is settled, not settled by the courts, there'll be some changes to that. But as it stands now, we'll have to do it and fund it. And if you had to fund, the state of New York is our partner in this, and one of the things Glenn said, I think you'll appreciate this, I don't know that you know it, but right now we discharge all of our sewage treatment treated, we only have secondary treatment here, that's our sewage treatment plant. We discharge into something called McKay Lake. People fish there. That, you don't have the rest of it, but McKay Lake, if you look right here, that's Swan Ponds, that's just going right into the Peconic Estuary. What we're doing is going to, we applied for a grant from the DEC, we're applying to the DEC for a grant, and we applied to the Regional Economic Development Council to move it, and Barbara and Rose worked on this as well, north of the groundwater divide. I think you guys were involved with this. This area has been dedicated for the sewage treatment recharge area north of the groundwater divide. So from here, in theory, they tell me, this all will go up to the Long Island Sound, so it's got a much further path before it reaches a surface water body. Indeed, it probably never will reach a surface water body, which is right here. It's going into a surface water body. So that's a good thing.
follow-up question also. Is there any opportunity to lobby the county of Suffolk for any of the sewer stabilization monies that are available to every other sewer district, existing sewer district, but the one that is at Calverton?
Yes, and we are doing that. What happens is when a sewer tax goes up more than 3%, the way the county law reads, that's a really good question. The way the county law reads is the sewer stabilization fund is supposed to come in to supplement that money. That is being worked on right now for the Riverhead sewage treatment plant, and then from there in Calverton.
Next topic, open space preservation. Over the years, the town of Riverhead's aggressive land preservation program has been funded primarily through the Community Preservation Fund monies, as well as bonding against anticipated CPF revenues. Acknowledging the recent decline in these revenues, what is your plan to continue the farmland preservation and open space acquisition programs?
We have a huge problem, and I don't know how many people understand this extent of our problem. The CPF funds right now, we're bringing in about $2.2 million a year. The debt service on the $70 million that we borrowed is about $5.6, $5.8 million a year. We have enough money to get us to 2018. In 2018, there'll be $600,000 left. I need the state, because the town of Riverhead, unless that debt service comes down every year, but unless real estate transactions really pick up in the next 3 or 4 years, the town general fund is going to have to make up the balance between the 2.2 or say 3 million and the $5.5 million of debt service. And I'm not sure, short of special state legislation to help the town, I'm not sure what we do, because the general fund budget cannot withstand that. It cannot, and I don't think in 2018 it's going to be able to withstand that. So we will be, I spent a lot of time in Albany in the last 2 years for this and our other economic development legislation. We will be talking to the legislators in Albany to figure out a way to fix this. It could be a combination of things, but I'm not prepared to discuss it, because we really have to speak to whoever our new assemblyman is and our new senator and our Senator Lavelle. The only thing left tools in our toolbox are the TDR program, where we allow additional density in certain areas, whether it's subdivision or commercial density, and you have to buy development rights from farmers. We're working on a way, which we haven't gotten it done yet, but one of the plans is, I keep looking at that clock, it doesn't change, so I guess that's not it. One of the plans is to streamline the TDR program and mirror, for the most part, the Pine Barrens Commission, the Pine Barrens statute. And what we're going to try to do, instead of having developers come in and find a farmer and willy-nilly, my words, but what they do doesn't make sense. I'll buy a development right here, I'll buy a development right here, I'll buy one back here, and they're not interconnected. What I'm a proponent of doing is that the town will set the price of TDRs, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months based on the latest appraisals, and when the planning board determines how many development rights credits you need, if they're $50,000 an acre and you need 10 development rights credits, you're going to deposit, the $500,000 into the farmland preservation program, and then we're going to let the farmers and the farmland select committee determine what's going to be purchased in the future. That money then can be leveraged against the county. Right now, when they do it, and I have this written, but certain board didn't follow my lead in this area, because I wanted to kind of strike the program we have now and do this program. So hopefully we will fix this in the way I'm envisioning this, then we can leverage that money against the county. Right now, we can't leverage anything against the county because we're jammed up. And that's about the only thing I can do. Now, I'm a huge proponent of getting the money that Southampton and East Hampton gets, and it should be now I'm really sounding like Barbara. It should be a East End community preservation program, and the community should be sharing in this pot, not just to Southampton and East Hampton or Southold, Riverhead, Shelter Island, because clearly we've done what we're supposed to do. Even if you look to the east of us in Southold, they haven't done near the amount that we've done, but I feel good for Scott Russell because he doesn't have the economic problem looming for him. But I'm not under any illusion that I can convince the state legislature to make an East End program. So we'll come up with another fix.
We have time for one quick question, if there's anything from the audience. Liz?
Going back to septic and sewage and nitrogen, I was impressed with the Riverhead Sewer District in that your financing for it had 3 levels, and even if you weren't hooked up, there was a small fee that you paid. And I'm wondering if that district could be extended to the whole town instead of like in each little section, so that there's a little bit of money coming in, and then you can strategize not just on where the commercial areas are, but to put some funds toward some of the environmentally sensitive areas.
The problem is what I said before. We screwed ourselves up. Our sewer district, our sewer treatment plant is surrounded by parkland.
Right, but it doesn't have to be connected to that. What I'm saying is, if we stop thinking of districts as hooked up to one location, but we look at the whole town as a district, and maybe you have a single on-site here, maybe you have a cluster here, maybe you have another central sewer here because it makes sense environmentally and economically, but the whole thing is part of one overall concept with the goal of both environmental and
They haven't thought about that. It's really thinking outside the box. I know you and I discussed it. I don't know that you get that. That's what Wayne Horsley was talking about when he kind of stuck his neck out on that, and a lot of people came that were not happy with that comment about making a county sewer district that everybody paid into the tax. I'm going to reserve judgment on that. I don't know that we could get that done in this near future. That may be what happens in the future, but in the near future, I don't know that the politicians are going to be able to do that.
Very quickly,
Real quick.
we're running late.
Aaron Virgin with the extent, but that contradicts what you just said about the Upcounts sewage treatment plant. The case could be made that could be a separate subset of a larger sewer district in the town.
No, that is EPCAL is its own sewer district.
But that's kind of what Glenn is
can't-
saying. You could do smaller sub-districts.
You would have
around.
to, in order to tax somebody, there has to be a nexus between the benefit they're receiving. Now, I'm going to be legalistic. What you're asking, I don't think you could legally do. You have to get something for that. When we were taxing you for your scavenger waste, which we eliminated that tax because it was unfair to the residents, there was a nexus between the tax and what they were getting. I don't think you could legally tax somebody putting them in a sewer district that didn't exist and not give them something for it. So if you had a community along the bay and you had a nitric system, you could create a district and create the taxes for that district to pay for it. But if you're John Public out on Sound Avenue and there was no way you were ever going to be connected to a sewer district or have any benefit from a sewer district, I don't think the law would allow that person to be taxed. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think the law exists that you can do that. That being said, as the county comes in and says things like the nitrate system has to be put in, or I use that because that's one people know, but as in certain areas where when your septic system fails, you've got to do certain types of systems. I think community systems and tax and setting up separate jurisdictions for that can work. That can work.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Russell. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Well, sorry. Opening remarks, and then we're going to have,
That was the exciting part.
and then we'll have questions in the topics that we had talked about. We'll ask the first question as a group question from the coalition, and then open it up to the audience. Again, for people in the audience, if you can give your name and town when you ask your question, we really appreciate that. Okay?
Thank you, and good evening. I'm very appreciative of the fact that this has been put together. I do believe and have been a long time supporter of saving what we have, appreciating what we have. By way of background, I grew up nearby Rocky Point, 1950. Farmlands, water was crystal clear, Long Island Sound, and over the years, as I aged, so did Long Island Sound. It got less and less clear. I mean, I could stand as a kid in the water up to here, see my toes. Okay, we have film in my family where you can actually see the pebbles in the water. That's how clear it used to be. And cause of that was our intrusion into the environment and our non-care of it. My background, I believe, does lend itself to some degree to being able to understand the issues and to ask the right questions and to understand where the resources are to fix some of the problems that we have with regard to our environment. I have a master's degree in public health with a subspecialty in toxicology. I spent most of my science years dealing with occupational diseases and reconstructing models of exposure that humans have and how those models affect their particular health. And there is a parallel, it's not directly applicable, but there's a parallel with environmental sciences that would allow me to be able to understand what people such as Glynis Berry brings to us. Okay? When she talks about the need for changes, I have that background and ability to understand those things. Also to understand, as I said, where to reach out for assistance with a variety of topics that will come our way, whether it be protecting our environment for simple things such as the great effort of George Bartunik and our volunteer litter campaign, anti-litter campaign here in town, to be able to build on those particular programs, to dealing with the issues of, this summer I had occasion to, I'm a kayaker in the bay, as well as I sail, and when we sailed, I went through red tide. And I had observed this 3 years ago and then didn't see it anymore. And, the only thing I could think of as I was out on my kayak is, don't let me take this moment to flip over. Because I had no idea what this stuff was. Okay, and so it's in looking at that and thinking, how is it that we bring back? This is a national estuary that we have on our south side and another one that we have on the north side with Long Island Sound. And how do we, as a community, bring them back to the glory that they really should be? And I think, as I said, my background does lend itself to being able to understand some of the issues. But most importantly, one of the things about me is I am always willing to say I don't know the answer. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't believe in shooting from the hip. I don't believe in faking it. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find out who can provide us with the answer and meet and speak with them. So open to your questions, and thank you.
Surface water quality and nitrogen loading. The town is taking the costly but necessary steps to comply with the state mandated upgrade to the sewage treatment plant. Science has also identified failing septic systems and agricultural practices as significant nitrogen sources impacting our ground and surface waters. What is your plan to address these and other threats to our waters?
Well, I think that the upgrade of our existing sewer system is but one step in the total picture of what we need to do to reduce the nitrogen load. We need to, as you pointed out, we have failing septic systems. We have to come up with a plan whereby we as a community can move away from reliance upon those systems. It is very costly individually for residents to do this. Suffolk County Department of Health is not really at the point where they're approving individual state-of-the-art different technologies for residential homes. We need to work with them to make that reality. The other thing I believe in that if we in Riverhead develop a plan that will address our issues, it is not sufficient for the North Fork. I think we have to partner with the towns to the east of us and the towns to the south of us to come up with a comprehensive plan for dealing with this issue and then seeking on both the state and national level the funding that will allow us to build this program. And not say that in 2 years we're going to eliminate or bring as close to zero nitrogen levels. No, is to set out and have a plan that step by step takes us to that point where eventually we reach zero. With regard to the contribution that our farmlands make, I think that the dialogue with the agricultural community has to be kept open, but we also have to bring to them their concern, obviously, with pesticide use, whether they be insecticides or fungicides, needs to. Their concern is their ability to produce enough that makes their products marketable, and they have products that everyone wants to buy. No one likes to buy products that have holes in them, and that's their concept. We need to work with them on a program that can identify what applications can be made to agriculture so that the product yields remain the same and they are not negatively impacted with their income, because that is their concern, that they will be able to make it. And we as a town have invested tremendously in preserving farmland. Okay? And we have great pride in our agricultural history and our current agricultural initiatives. What will happen is always the threat that, well, if we can't do it this way, we're not working in partnership to moving in the same direction, we're going to sell our lands for development. We're going to get off the land, we won't farm anymore. So I think we need to provide that type of science to them, realistically what can be done, and I believe that there are those products out there that can work. We just need to discover them and sit down with them and slowly put it in place. I also think, one other thing, for residential use, not only our septic systems, but we all love our green lawns. My lawn is greener than your lawn, it's better, okay? We all use fertilizers to make that happen. I think we need a town-wide program that provides an incentive for people to use an integrated pest management program, a really active, vigorous integrated pest management program to reduce the use of home use of fertilizers. It's sort of collectively, every little bit counts. It adds up to the whole of what you want to accomplish. And if we can do each one of those things, I think we will move more towards the goal that we would like to have.
Would you then endorse or adopt a best management practice, including organic maintenance practices for town-owned properties?
Definitely. We should set, local government is the agency that should set the example. We're the ones that can say when someone says, show me that this works, we can say, we have done this, and it works. Here it is, this is what we did. Come and see what we've done. That is part of the role, an appropriate role and function for local government. We need to be able to do that.
Any questions from the audience on this? move on to the next topic, dark skies. The town of Riverhead was once one of the first towns to adopt dark skies legislation back in 2002. But it appears that enforcement and compliance has been very loose, especially with respect to new development projects. What are your plans to address the ever-increasing light pollution of our night skies?
Well, I think the first thing is that you have legislation that is clear, and we need to begin enforcing. We need to take it off the books, off the paper, and make it practice. And that needs consistency and a will to do that. I would also consider that any new developer, for example, we'll take, what is it, Dick's Sporting Goods is coming in, where they are on the south side, the land there. Okay. When they came in with their site plan, I think the requirement of every site plan is a part of that, an aspect of program on how you are going to comply with our dark skies regulations. And if it's not there and it's not satisfactory, your site plan is incomplete. And it's not going to go anywhere until you provide us with that. We need to have the will and the force to do that. We have, you know, since 2002, that's spectacular for a town to have done. You know, but we don't enforce it. Now, excuses about we don't have enough enforcement people, and that there are ways in which before it is actually built and is evidenced as being non-compliant, that you can, I believe, build in. And one of the ways is when a site plan comes in, it has to have that component part to it. And you have the ability to reject that site plan based on that, if it's not complete enough.
Any questions? A follow-up then, just as multiple projects in one area often require a comprehensive environmental impact study, should the cumulative effect of commercial lighting along County Road 58 or at EPCAL be considered when looking at lighting plans?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, if you are going to, you can't have spot compliance. You have to have a sense of your total picture of where and how you want to look and what you want. And as each piece comes in and fills is a particular aspect of it, what you need to do is say, you need to be in line with everything else that's here. So you do need an overall sense to develop a comprehensive plan for that. Definitely. Without it, you're just going to constantly be fighting with whatever comes in, and it will not benefit overall the town. We have this law, we passed it for a reason. We made a commitment to this community. We made a commitment to our unique character, our quality of life. We put it on paper, now we have to put it in place.
Barbara?
I was just wondering, I think the current law allows for or provides for street lighting to come into compliance with dark skies by the year 2017. But I don't think it addresses older shopping centers. I think they're sort of scot-free until a major renovation takes place. I'm just wondering if there wouldn't be an opportunity to address compliance with the law on existing commercial shopping centers, etc., and give them a time frame in which to comply.
I think actually, I would agree with you, Barbara. I think that you can always go back and say that this is, yes, you came in, you know, under the radar here or before the radar was addressed. And what we normally do is say, well, you get grandfathered in so you don't have to do it. I think in this instance, the overall effect that we want, especially with dark skies legislation, is that at some point everybody needs to be in compliance. And I'm not sure, to tell you the truth, I don't know if there is a current town plan, as you suggested within the law, for all new to come in, and all streetlights to come into compliance by 2017. I know there's a dark skies committee. I haven't seen them actively, you know, I haven't heard about their work in a while. I haven't heard any town board liaison reports about what this committee is doing and where they're going, their recommendations for the town, how they think things should be implemented. And I think that's a very important piece. We let a lot slide, and for people who know me, it's just something that, no, this is the way it's supposed to be and this is what we need to do. But I think that we can, if we can go to them and say, you know, it doesn't have to happen overnight. It can be a rolling in of your replacement of your lighting, and that over a period of time to give them, I think it's worthwhile. I think it's the dialogue that is worthwhile. Whether they'll tell us, you know, what to do and where to go is another thing, but you really don't know until you ask. You can't assume that they're going to say no, that they don't want to do anything, until you ask and you sit down and say, you know, let's be reasonable about this. You're a neighbor, you got to be a good neighbor. You know, that's something I grew up with in the 60s. We always talked about, you know, corporations and businesses being good neighbors, because they are part of our neighborhood, and they should be, so, yeah, definitely.
The Dark Skies Committee basically has been inactive for a couple of years, even though it still resides on the website.
What?
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know. I don't know that. I mean, I don't know why they have become inactive. I remember initially, because I came to Riverhead in 2000, and I remember initially after the legislation hearing a lot about they were very, very vocal and such, and as I can say, I have not heard or even seen them for a while. And, you know, shame on me for not finding out, but I don't know why.
Next topic, MCAL. The town has indicated that several hundred acres of habitat will be set aside as open space if the proposed subdivision is approved. What is your plan for the proper management and maintenance of the preserved lands to ensure that they are accessible to the public for passive recreational and active educational uses and still remain viable habitat?
First, I'm not sure what several hundred acres that they're going to set aside. I would assume it would include some of the core acres on the western side of the land, okay, and the rest being compatible growth areas, grasslands. One of the things we face as a town that is now in economic trouble is the growth of government. By growth of government, people tend to believe that you increase your staff. One of the things I would pursue for the maintenance, the creation of it, is to establish a conservation corps, a youth conservation corps like they have in many states. Montana, even the state I lived in, Utah, had one. Wyoming, Arizona. And they have these youth conservation corps that are focused on land management, maintenance, and doing all of the projects that would take to develop that. And one of the avenues we have that we could perhaps partner with is United Way has a wonderful program for youth, at-risk youth, called Youth Build. And those young people could become part of or formulate this youth corps that we have. I think it would be a great opportunity for young people, and most youth corps in those states, like when I lived in Utah, our youth corps, you had to be 16 and you could be as old as 23 for people in it. The youth basically would get an education in occupations such as land management, okay, how to do conservation, basic preservation work. So it provides them with an opportunity to learn not only and work for something that is worthwhile, but it also gives them a respect for the land and their environment where they are, so that's because they're going to be the next generation, they're going to be the stewards after we're gone. So that's how I would begin to approach that. One other thing was that I guess also working with the Pine Barrens Commission that has created projects in other land, in other pieces of property, not necessarily at MCAL, but working with them with their ideas. Because that land is, they've done a lot of work on what needs to be preserved, what needs to be maintained, and how to do it. There are things that they've set in place, and using that expertise and competency and not necessarily reinventing the wheel.
Questions from the audience? No, we'll move on to the next. Open space preservation.
Okay.
Over the years, the town of Riverhead's aggressive land preservation program has been funded primarily through the Community Preservation Fund monies. as well as bonding against anticipated CPF revenues. Acknowledging the recent decline in these revenues, what is your plan to continue the farmland preservation and open space acquisition programs?
Well, as you just said, the CPF fund today, its reserves, and any monies coming into it are just being used for the debt service that we have annually to do. And I think that if we look at the town of Riverhead, we really were pioneers in preserving land. The approach that we took, which was to bond, so that we could do it and not have to wait and be dependent upon the real estate market to such a large degree to bring us that 2% transfer tax, allowed us very early on to identify, rank, and preserve lands here in Riverhead. We have preserved lands or preserved farmlands. There was recently a statement, and I looked online, and it is about 25% of the landmass in Riverhead is preserved. That's a tremendous record. That's something that we should all applaud ourselves about. What we can do is to now say to the state of New York, look, we've done our job. We've maintained lands. We've maintained farmlands so that New York State can retain its rank as an agricultural producer. All of these things, we have done our fair share. We are having some problems with paying our debt as well as getting monies to preserve lands that still are at risk for development that we would like to preserve. We need some assistance from you. What can you do in terms, and not on a permanent basis, but until such time as the real estate market rebounds, and it will, because you know real estate market goes up and down, it's cyclical, that we will have sufficient monies to not only pay our debt, but put monies in so that we can purchase additional lands over time. So my thing is to reach out to the state and see where we can. Other than that, we will be limping along and hoping that the real estate market increases.
Questions? Well, a follow-up to that then. Of all the town's needs, and there are many, where would you rate the priority of continued preservation of farmland and open space?
Right now with this administration,
Where would you rate it?
where would I put
Yes.
it? Okay. I would actually see it as the #1 priority. I take that back. I would see it as the second priority. My first priority for local government and for this town is public safety. And through public safety, we also need to have lands that are preserved. So I would put it second, because public safety to me is the #1 priority for us in this town.
Questions? I'm seeing that, oh, yes.
Public safety, can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean?
Well, public safety to me is a little bit more than just having a massive police presence. Public safety deals with things such as your sidewalks being in decent shape and having sidewalks in areas where people want them. You know, I was in Wading River about the primary seems like it was forever ago, but I guess it was just a couple of months ago. I was in Wading River and I was walking an area, Wildwood Estates, Wildwood Hills, and talking to people, and they said, no sidewalks. We do not want sidewalks. I said, okay, no sidewalks for you. But there are other parts of the town where we need this. In the core area here in Riverhead, I know, and I watch, there are many families with young children. It's difficult to maneuver, and I have to tell you, just the sidewalks alone, it was very embarrassing. I went out of a building here the other day and took a big flop right on the sidewalk, just spread eagled straight out. Public safety involves that. Public safety also involves people having a sense that any area you go to in our town is safe for you to be there. One of the obstacles, and it's very curious that to downtown development that has been pointed out by people who have been brought in to tell us about what we need to do and where we should go, is that there is the perception that our downtown area is unsafe. And you have all heard me, I've made no bones about it. I've stated that we have unsavory occupations going on here. In the middle of the day, to have prostitutes operating in the parking lot and back of the buildings right over there, to me, is not a safe environment. To watch and be able to pick out the person across the street who's dealing drugs. Of course, don't ask how I know that, but person dealing drugs, okay, that's not a safe environment. You know, we need to create that, but it entails other things.
Yes.
That reminds me of what we observed today at Millwood, where the new Costco development is coming in, and where there's absolutely no barrier between the construction site and the homes. And it's kind of a nightmarish scenario to imagine children from those homes wandering onto a construction site where there's heavy machinery because there are no barriers there. So that's both an environmental issue and a public safety issue, it seems.
I agree with you, yeah.
Actually, along the same lines there, I was wondering, what would you do, like, when I saw the people, what's the name of that Millbrook, that, you know, they seem that there's great access to people who will be coming from Costco to break in or get to the area. What would you do in anticipation for any of these other new buildings and such coming in, new programs, so that we can have protection, they can have protection? I mean, is there anything that can be done? Because, you know, Ron Walton obviously didn't think about it or take anything to effect where they were worried about those people in that area. What do we do so that wouldn't happen again?
I think that as new projects come across the desks at Town Hall, the first thing that needs to be done is to reach out to those communities that will be affected, that abut where the project is going to be, and to talk to the residents there, quite frankly, talk to them frankly and honestly about what is going to be done. The fact that you will now have lights, where before, you know, one woman in the community yesterday as I was walking around talked about the fact that in the 31 years she lived there, she never had to put a shade up in her bathroom because there was all these trees in back of her, but now she has to put up a shade because the guys are out there at night. So it's working. I think meeting with the community and asking, you know, merely saying that they have to put up, like, as you've seen on the expressway, the sound barriers, such as that, as, you know, putting up a barrier is a solution. However, it should be a barrier that the community is acceptable of, that they want to have the sort of barrier that they want there. You know, the other tragedy as we're talking about this is that as that was cleared, it was very evident that, which is great. I hadn't smelled skunk on Long Island since I think I was about 10 years old. It was great. There's skunks back here and making up homes here in Riverhead. But yet, the disturbance of all of that land, their habitat is gone. And where they are is now in the Millbrook community, which isn't pleasant for the Millbrook residents, okay? Nor for some of their dogs. You know, if you've ever had a dog that's been skunked, it takes a lot of tomato juice to make it smell nice again. But it would be something in talking to communities, not after everything gets done, but before, as part of that entire process. It's a lot of work. It means a lot of work. But I also think that if done, and if it becomes practical, after a while, you know, you get better at how you do things. You know, the first time you drove a car, you didn't drive it as well as perhaps you drive today, or maybe it's the opposite, you drove better than what you drive today. But on the other hand, stuff changes, stuff busting up the place.
I think the nail fell. You in a bar and
We'll often have to run out so we don't have to pay.
the nail is
But
the nail is
the thing with, no, yeah, enough of that. Martin?
I have a question. Do you think our planning board has failed us in this whole Costco fiasco? Guess that's a good way to put it.
I think the planning board, within its narrow scope and definition of what it does and what their job is, has indeed failed us. I think they failed, and the planning department failed the residents of Riverhead with this project, because I personally believe that every project that comes in, although the town board does not control that instrument of government known as the planning board. Should have gotten from the planning department and said, this project's coming in, what are the pros and cons? What are the things that can go wrong? What are the things that will go right? Where's the benefits, where are the disadvantages? So in that sense there, we need to systemically within our town hall refocus, okay, and begin asking those questions, because it always becomes, as we have seen, well, the planning board did it, the town board couldn't do it, and we're very sorry that it happened. And they did try once before to influence the planning board in the past recent 4 years, and what happened is they were basically told, take a walk. You can't tell us what to do, but you can tell your planning department to talk to you. You can have your planning department share that information, because the planning department works for the town of Riverhead and has as its instrument of making decisions the planning board. We need to relook at some of this and begin demanding information from people.
Since we have time, would you mind going on to one more topic?
Try.
Protection of our rural corridors. Development not only pressures open space preservation, but increases traffic, vehicular emissions, increases commercial, residential, and corridor lighting, adding to our night skies light pollution, and infringes on historic wildlife habitats and pathways. Given what happened along County Road 58, the recent pressures to both proposed and approved development along Sound Avenue and Main Road, what is your position on what the town can and should do to further protect our historic and rural corridors?
Well, first of all, be honest, I'm a member of Save Main Road. And I'm a member of Save Main Road because I believe we need to preserve that historic corridor and we need to limit the type of development that comes there. The steps that need to be taken are to understand that as historic corridors, we need to first address the issue that has come along with a lot of what's happened on Sound Avenue, as well as Main Road, of traffic. How do we control this? People complain about traffic. I know there's a concern from Willow Ponds that there's a section of some 400 acres on Sound Avenue that they feel is ripe for development and is going to be developed. I think the first step that we can do in order to look at where we are and what are our options, perhaps we should have a moratorium on development in both of these corridors. Whether or not I could ever get that as town supervisor past the board to do that, I'm not sure that would happen, but I certainly would call for it. And not a moratorium for 10 years, not a moratorium for 5 years, but let's put together all our information and see where we are. And also to talk to the state as to what are their expectations, because they're the ones that have given us the designation as a historic corridor. We haven't done it, the state of New York has done it. What comes out of the Department of Preservation of Parks and Historic sites? What are their expectations and how can they assist us with achieving this goal of truly limiting the development there? And I have to be honest, my position is anybody that buys a chunk of land, we hear the argument here in River as of right, we hear it all the time that they have the right to develop it. You are a land speculator. You've taken a risk, you buy a chunk of land, you are speculating. And anyone, it's like buying stocks. You buy a stock, it goes up, it goes down, you make a decision about it. But when you speculate in land like that, you don't, as far as I'm concerned, have a guarantee that when you bought it and it was zoned this, that it stays zoned that forever. Things change.
Just a quick question. In light of the number of regional issues that impact individual towns, like transportation management or open space preservation, surface water quality, groundwater quality, housing, do you think there's an opportunity for towns like Riverhead to work more cooperatively with other towns to collectively address these regionally significant issues, like groundwater or open space?
Yes, I am a big proponent of intermunicipal agreements, working together regionally for an answer. You know, many people think that if we work with this, like I have called for working with the town of Southampton as part of the revitalization of the downtown area, of this area here. Okay. A lot of people view that as we are giving up our individual identity, our autonomy, and you're not, because when you go in and you are part of a collective, you do retain your identity. People who know how to negotiate, who know how to work cooperatively, aren't threatened by that. And they don't need to say that, you know, Southampton screwed us on the sewer hookups to jail or whatever, you know, as a way of sticking our head in the sand and being isolationists. The time has come for the East End, I believe. Our future for the whole East End is tied to cooperative efforts, working together. There is no other way for us. We can't have us doing this, them not doing that, them doing that, pointing the finger, why aren't you guys doing this? We need to sit down and do this. Transportation is a big one. I mean, I was on the school board, and my proposal to the school district was we create a regional student transportation system that is for the entire East End. We all have the school districts out here all don't have their own little individual kingdom for that. And I believe very much in cooperative efforts. Most of my work life has been about putting together various pieces from everywhere to make a whole. So I agree with you.
Any questions? Yeah, Andrew Leonard's South Jamesport. I wonder how you view the master plan. I wonder if you see the master plan as a basis for a blueprint for the future of the town. Our present supervisor has indicated that's a load of crap.
Yes, I'm aware of that statement, and you know, having, I'm not here to bash on you, I'm here to give you my ideas. I believe that our master plan, it's like building a house you've framed out. And each year, we need to look at how we are continuing to build that house. It provided us with the foundation, and we must not look at just one part of it today, and in 5 years look at another part. But every 2 years, or 3 years, we need to look at the entire plan, and we need to collect the information that says, this worked, this didn't work, this is changing, this is moving in this direction. We need to constantly update what we do. That is not a static document, as I said in Calverton. It is not Moses coming off the mountain with the 2 tablets. It is not. It was a tremendous step forward for Riverhead. Tremendous step forward. But we need to keep monitoring it. You know, we adopted it in 2003, and then we did the zone use work in 2004, 2005, with some changes as we go along. But we have never looked at it overall and where we are with its goals and how we are doing. And we need to stop and do that. I know there will be criticism about that. I perhaps rely too much upon analysis. But when I think about when you plan to take an action, you need to first do analysis, get your information, and then you need to synthesize your information before you can develop an activity to get an outcome that you want. It's 3 steps that have to be done, and it's one of the things I believe has not been the prevailing approach here in Riverhead. There have been great efforts to do that, to adopt that model, okay? And there's been even greater pushback not to do it. So I think that we need to embrace our master plan. It is our future. We need to understand and make that house a house that everyone is comfortable living in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Before we leave, I want to thank our hosts, Josh and the New York
Thank you.
League of Conservation Voters. In the room, as part of the coalition, we have Dan Galizio from the Community Planning Center. We have Aaron Virgin from the Group for the East End here tonight. We have Bridget Keller from the South Jamesport Civic Association. We have Glynis Berry from Conic Green Growth. Unfortunately, Conic Baykeeper Kevin McAllister and Eric Beegler from the Park Sound Heights Civic Association couldn't be here tonight, but just wanted to thank them for their participation. And if you have any questions for those individuals, feel free to talk with them.
And can we
They're
thank
great
Bill
resources.
also? And also Riverhead Local. I just wanted to say two brief things. You know, New York League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, we're a statewide organization. We've been working out in Long Island for a while, and we've been working in East Hampton recently on civic engagement and things of this sort. And I just want to give tremendous credit to Bill and Barbara and Rose for indulging me about a month ago to have a discussion about doing something like this in Riverhead, because we saw it being critically important. And I want to salute the three of them and for all of you coming out tonight. We hope to do a lot more going forward after the election. Again, this is a civic engagement education process, but after the election, work with the groups that are co-sponsoring this as well to come up with a little bit of a green agenda, a green guide, if you will, so people like you can be further engaged, and hopefully we can grow this circle. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We really greatly appreciate it.